So today we hear about the 10 stages of creation. Yesterday we heard about 3 stages of destruction. And today 10 stages of creation. So let's get started. Maitreya is explaining this to Vidura, and he says that time, remember, time is basically what's under the discussion right now. Time is the thing that allows reality to change into something new and erase, like have creations and destructions. So time takes the universe back into manifest existence in 10 stages. So time, remember we heard sometimes it affects the external universe, sometimes it doesn't. When it doesn't affect the external universe, then nothing happens. The universe just becomes potentialized. And then when it does affect the external universe, then it gets activated, and so it gets transformed from its potentialized avyakta into an activated thing called mahatattva. So really the singularity form, as we would say these days with our cosmology, the singularity form of the universe is in 2 phases. One is avyakta, which is it's just a potential singularity. And then there's mahatattva, which is that actual actuated singularity that's active. And then time will then proceed in 10 phases to cause the activated mahatattva, the activated singularity, to manifest the universe. It's going to go through 10 phases of creation. Hello, everybody. So here they are. Here are the 10 phases. The first phase. The first 6 phases are natural evolution, and then the final 4 phases are in evolution, which is guided by Brahma. So natural evolution means evolution which is just happening automatically by the basic system that Vishnu has in place. And then the later 4 stages of evolution happen by intelligent intervention. All right, so the first 6. The first one is time gets applied by the original person to stimulate the balance of unmanifest nature, which then manifests as the great totality of sentience. So that's the first phase of creation, is time changing the unmanifest singularity into the manifest singularity, changing avyakta into mahatattva. The second phase of creation is enabling the great totality of sentience to become the principle of will and ambition, which is so the first phase of creation is when time causes the avyakta to become mahatattva, the unmanifest universe to become the manifest potential form of the universe. Second phase is when the potential form of the universe becomes its first thing. The first thing that it becomes is ahankara. Now, these things take a very long time. That's why they're whole entire epochs or phases. The third phase is when time mixes doership with tamas. So you shouldn't be told, for those of you who come regularly, you shouldn't be too much out in left field because you've heard this stuff before. So remember, doership or ahankara mixes with rajas, tamas, and sattva and then has effects. So the first phase of time's action is to change avyakta into mahatattva, to change the unmanifest universe into the manifest seed of it. Then the second phase of time's creativity is to change the seed into some kind of a root. And that root is the ahankara, or the sense of will and ambition and doership. Then the ahankara the sense of will interacts with things. Interacts with the 3 basic qualities of nature itself. So when it interacts with tamas, then it's going to evolve the tangible qualities. So according to this, the tangible qualities will evolve first. According to this, if this is sequential, then the tangible qualities should be evolving first. Then the 4th phase of creativity is when time causes or allows ahankar to interact with rajas. And that's what, during that whole phase, that's when all of the powers to interact with the elements evolve. During the third phase of creativity is when all of the physical substances evolve. And yeah, just physical substances. The physical substances, solids, liquids, heats or energies, airs, gases, and space. Once those evolve, then it goes into the next phase, and time causes doership to interact with the rajas to produce the capacity to interact with those things, to experience and interact with those things. Then in the fifth phase is when it mixes ahankara with sattva. And then you get the capacity for consciousness to link to the tools that were developed in the rajas phase. So in the tamas phase, the ahankara develops all of the elements that are going to be experienced. In the fourth phase, it develops the tools to interact with those elements. And then in the fifth phase, it develops the power to use the tools. Then in the sixth phase, this is a very interesting thing. In the sixth phase, it causes darkness to arise, capable of dimming the masterful soul's brilliant illumination of wisdom. So this is very interesting. In order to fit, you know how you might have to go on a diet to fit into some pants that you used to wear when you were a teenager? So in the same way, to fit consciousness inside an external vehicle for it, it has to be slimmed a bit. It has to be squished and narrowed and able to fit into this life form. So that's the sixth phase. It's developing an avidya, or a capacity to limit the consciousness so that it can fully identify with just this one structure that it wants to inhabit. Now, those are the 6 stages of natural evolution, and then there's 4 more left, right? Those things you've actually heard about before. 6 is the only new thing really there. And these are the 6 stages of natural evolution. Next come 3 stages of creation engineered by Brahma. 3. And then the 10th, which is a hybrid. So the next 3 phases of creation are engineered by Brahma, the incarnation of creativity, whose intellect is empowered by all attractivity. So the 7th phase then is when Brahma is going to engineer 6 types of immovable living things: trees, herbs, vines, bamboos, bushes, and flowering trees. Then the 8th phase, he's going to engineer 28 types of animals. And then in the 3rd phase, he's going to engineer humans. Then the 4th phase, which is, so this is the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd phase of Brahma's evolution. So it's the 7th, 8th, and 9th phase overall. So first come things like simple organisms like trees, plants, etc. Then comes simpler animal structures, and then comes humans, and then in the last one, it's the engineered evolution of divinities, gods. So the last 4 stages are just simply in order from simple to complex. This is what I said before, what I hinted at before, that that's a very interesting thing. Somebody said, I don't know, intentionally or not, is making an allusion to how the Bible says things happen in 7 days. It's really not similar in the least. None of these things are similar. None of the phases correspond, as far as I know. And there's also 10 phases. And are also not days, but anyway, remember what I said earlier on, that evolution is a tricky thing because Brahma conceives of it first. Like the first thing to evolve is the first thing to evolve is the Purusha, which is the prototype for everything. So the complete picture is already there in the beginning and Brahma comprehends it. But then in order to enact it or enable it to happen, it's going to happen over time from simplest to most complex. So in other words, when the empiricists look at the world and look at the records of history that they can access, and they dig at the fossils that they can access, they see that it appears that simpler forms only existed in the past, and then gradually more and more complex forms came into being. That matches what's being said right here. Right? Even though you have people who say that they believe in the Bhagavatam and everything who are against the idea of evolution at all, actually the Bhagavatam right here is saying the exact same thing that empirical biology and archaeological biology and all that stuff has come up with, that the forms of life gradually appear over time from simplest up to the most complex. Even though they're based on a template which is already pre-existing, which is the most complex life form, they're based on the Purusha, which is the most complex and complete life form, but they come into being, the universe gradually becomes able to sustain them and produce them. Make sense? Yeah, it kind of does decrease the avidya as the series progresses. There's a question of why the 10th one is considered a hybrid of natural evolution and engineered evolution, and we'll get to that. But first, let's just consider it as if they're all the same. All four of these are the same, guided by Brahma. The last one, I'll give you a little caveat at the end. Lava Rela says, so Adishesha existed before even the world, so what was it holding up before the world? There's no before the world. The world is the world. The world is sometimes manifest and sometimes unmanifest. Because it exists, because Vishnu, or the basic consciousness or the experiencer, always exists, but sometimes pays attention and sometimes doesn't. Adishesha is holding up Vishnu, and Vishnu manifests the world. And that's continuous no matter what it is. All right, so let's look in more detail. There's more detail given about these phases. So all you know so far is the first phase of engineered evolution. No, I don't think so. The first, maybe, I don't know. I got so many questions. Flatlander says some people think that some human races are more evolved than other human races. This is not supported by the Vedas, it seems. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. We haven't found out yet. Let's see. But you know that the basic worldview of the Vedas is it doesn't matter if you're a tree or a god. Everything is good for something and good at something, and that something is just as good as anything that anybody else does, and everybody should do whatever it is that they do. You don't get self-worth by being something that you're not, even if it's not as fancy or something as somebody else. So even if the Vedas is going to say, I'm not sure, let's see, even if they're going to say, well, this species of humans, they say that there's some number of types of humans, like in the hundreds of thousands of types of humans. For example, they divide it into basically 4 categories: Shudras, Vaishyas, Kshatriyas, and Brahmanas. And the Brahmanas are the most evolved. But that doesn't mean that the Brahmanas are superior to Shudras in some kind of fundamental sense. They're just better at understanding intellectual things. So everybody does their function, and everybody is respected for doing their function. All right, so let's look at these 4 phases in more detail. The first phase of engineered evolution is the development of very simple life forms. This is unmoving life forms. Then the second phase is the moving life forms, the animals. And the third phase is the humans, and the fourth phase is the gods. So they're going to say there's 6 kind of immovable things, 28 kinds of animals, and I don't think they mention a number for humans. They didn't mention a number of humans, so that question is not really going to be addressed here, Flatlander. And then they do mention numbers of divinities. There's a bunch of them. We'll get there. Let's look at the first phase. Innumerable living things, 6 kinds. What kinds? There's trees. And then there's herbs, which are kind of like small trees. Then there's vines, which are kind of like weak trees. And then there's bamboos, which are sort of like grass trying to be a tree. Then there's bushes, and then there's special kind of trees that make flowers, apparently. Bushes probably means like grass. Grass actually may not be the best translation. Now, Maitreya makes a note of what's special about them in terms of the evolution. He says they digest nourishment vertically upwards and are practically insentient except for a slight ability to feel things within themselves. So they have a slight ability to feel things. They have a slight ability to experience and feel things. Like they can tell where the sun is. And they can tell what the temperature is, slightly, for example. But there's not much more than that going on in their sentience. It's just a basic desire to get sun, get energy, and grow. And then the interesting thing about them is they digest nourishment vertically upwards. And this is going to be, for some reason, a distinguishing characteristic about the different types of life forms, how they digest nourishment. So if you think about trees and everything, it's very interesting. They digest nourishment upwards. They eat through their feet, and then they pull up the nourishment through the rest of their body. We are the opposite, right? We digest vertically downward. Whereas animals, they digest horizontally. Okay, so that's the first phase. First, you have to have plants before you can have animals, because the animals even need to eat the plants, right? And also just the basic structures of digestion, metabolism, everything is established in plants. All the things that are established in plants are going to be used in the animals and the gods as well. All the biological structures. So first he establishes the plants. Then he's got 28 types of animals whose digestive tracts proceed horizontally. So an animal is defined here as they eat this way. Plants defined as they eat this way. Humans eat this way. Now here's the 28. Oh wait, now how much sentience do they have? That's also a distinction between the groups. The immovable things, they basically don't really have that much sentience at all. The animals, they exhibit sentience, especially, that's interesting, but plants respond to love too. They basically feel things. But in a very basic way. The animals have a much, much more active sentience. Like if you think your plant responds to love, get a cat or a dog and see how that responds to love. It's way more than a plant. So they exhibit sentience, especially through the sense of smell. So their sentience is particularly high in the sense of smell. That's why they're called mriga, because they're always sniffing around in the earth. Earth is the thing that brings the smell, is the element that produces smell. Okay, they all exhibit sentience, especially through the sense of smell. But so they got sentience; it's active like humans, and in particular, their sense of smell is really acute. But their minds and conceptions are quite dim. So they have the sensorial sentience is high, in many cases higher than humans, especially the sense of smell. But the processing power for it isn't quite up to par yet. They cannot understand much wisdom. He says much wisdom. They can understand wisdom. They do have morality and they do have ethics and they do have things like that, but they can't understand much of it. Hang on, Michelle. Let's address that question in a second. They cannot understand much wisdom. They have feet with 2, 1, or 5 nails. So here's a subdivision of the 28 types. They can either have 2 nails, 1 nail. Some have 1 nail, like a horse, for example. I think, no, horse, there's 2. Some animals have 1 big gigantic nail. Some have split in half, and some have it in 5. They have feet with, Some have wings. Those with 2 nails include cows, goats, buffalo, wild oxen, hogs, deer, horned antelopes, sheep, and camels. Those with 1 nail include horses, mules, donkeys, and some types of deer, wild cows, and buffalo. Those with 5 nails include monkeys, elephants, canines like dogs, jackals, and foxes, felines like tigers and lions, rodents like rabbits and porcupines, and reptiles like turtles. Right? Turtles, we got 5 nails. I got 2 turtles. And reptiles like turtles, lizards, alligators, and so on. The winged included birds of prey like vultures and hawks, water birds like herons, cranes, and then one bird that I couldn't translate into English, belugas, swans and pond cranes, lovely birds like peacocks and chakravakra, and frightful birds also like crows and owls. Owls are frightful birds, and so on. Okay, Melissa has a question, which is about how the bodies are in Bhagavan's reality. So in Bhagavan's reality, you're also going to see plants, animals, humans, gods. So she says, the spiritual world with Krishna, would a jiva occupy a plant body? If so, would they have more of an awareness of being devotional than plants in the material world? Yes, yes, yes. Yes, the answer is yes to all of those questions. Yeah, I think you're right, Ms. Vinay. Okay, so you got, I don't know, I think if you counted all those guys, you would come up with 28. But basically, they categorize them into the way that the feet are structured. They categorize, Maitreya is categorizing them by the way the feet are structured. It's giving 1, 2, or 5 digits, and then having some having wings. So you got 4 groups, 1, 2, 5, or winged. And then there's subdivisions of types within those. And probably there's some sequence through which they appear. This is a summary of it. Now the human phase is developed. So first there's plants get implemented and they come into being in the universe. Different kinds of plants, probably grasses first, then bamboos, then vines, maybe not, then bushes, and then vines, and then trees. Probably like that, in that order. And then after the plants are all evolved, then you got the basic stuff that you need to make animals evolve. So then Brahma works on getting animals to evolve. 1 digited, 2 digited, 5 digited, winged, gets all those guys. Once those guys are evolved, plants and animals, then you got everything that you need to build the human structures. So now he starts to work on having the humans evolve. So the 9th phase total, of the 3rd phase of Brahma's evolution, is he engineers humans, a life form who digests vertically downward. So plants vertically up, animals horizontally, and humans vertically down. Ambition is very prominent in them. So he doesn't say anything about sentience because obviously, they got sentience. They have active sense perceptions and their intellectual apparatus is on par. It's pretty good. We can perceive things and intellectualize them and understand them well. But the notable thing about humans, more than the other species that came before, is ambition. They have a lot of ambition. They have a lot of passion, a lot of desire. They idealize work and are always concerned with pleasure and displeasure. So way more than animals. In fact, animals, sexually speaking, I don't know how many species there are that would have sex all the time. The vast majority of animals, they have sex at a certain time of the year. Human beings are just like, boom, all the time. By the structure, everything is always there and ready. Animal stuff is always like hidden and not there until it's that time of the year. So human beings are really passionate, really interested in pleasure, really trying to avoid displeasure, and really ambitious. And the karma, so when they say here they idealize work is karma. The human being is a very special creature for karma because there's a lot of ambition to work. There's a lot of work. Ambition means will. There's a lot of new initiative going on in human beings. So human beings are renowned, even compared to the gods, for generating a boatload of karma. And remember, karma can be good or good, it can bring you good results or bad results. So it's not necessarily bad that humans generate a boatload of karma or getting rid of a boatload of karma. The best way to deal with karma is as a human, not as a god, and certainly not as an animal. Because there's tons of passion and tons of ambition. So the human structures are designed to really make us inclined to work and achieve things. Animals, they don't really care about achieving anything. They just wake up, eat, feed their dependents, cuddle up, or defend themselves against something, go to sleep, and then do it again the next day. They don't think, what am I doing with my life? Every day I just wake up, eat, take care of my kids, go to sleep. What am I really doing in my life? Like a dog never thinks that. An elephant doesn't care. Even a monkey doesn't care. I haven't achieved anything great. I haven't discovered the biggest banana tree in the world. I haven't discovered a new mountain. No gorilla thinks like that. But humans are all about that. Oh, I'm so useless. All I do is just nothing. I haven't. That's a human problem. Keep asking the same question, Shivaram. And I'm not going to answer it again because I'll go back and look. I'll answer it next time it comes up in the text. Now, the 10th stage. The 10th and final stage is a hybrid of natural evolution and creative engineering. So the 10th stage is where Brahma manifests the gods. Very interesting stuff here. So if this is the 10th phase, then it means that the gods didn't really manifest until after the human structures were developed. This is pretty weird because I don't know. When you're going to hear about how Brahma's genealogy is going to go on. There's certain kind of gods that he's going to make that are going to help him do this stuff. Those gods are not really in this class of this 10th development. There's some initial beings that he's going to make first that are going to help him do all the rest of this stuff. Then once he gets it down, it's going to proceed in this order. No, gods don't need humans to believe in them. That's like a Greek theory. Hey, Yellow. Okay, so Brahma engineers forms. There's a possibility they got this whole thing wrong in a sense that this may be how he's planning it out. I may have it backwards or something. This is what the best way I can conceive of it is the way I'm explaining it to you. But anyway, in the 10th phase, he engineers forms befitting the divinities who evolved at the 5th stage. Okay, so this is why it's a combination. And this is why it's confusing us. The gods are the 5th stage of natural evolution. They appear before any living creatures appear. But they don't get their specific bodies until much later. So that's what it's. In the 10th phase of creation, Brahma engineers forms befitting the divinities who evolved at the 5th stage. So the divinities evolved at the 5th stage, all the powers in the universe. They don't really get forms that befit them until after humans are developed, because you're going to build on the basic structure of humans. Yeah, because they're more evolved. Thus, the Kumara and other divinities came into tangible existence. But prior to this, they existed, but they didn't have a tangible body. There are 8 types of such divinities. So there's 8 types of gods. And here they are. Vibhuta, Pitri, Asura, Gandharva, Apsara, Siddha, Charna, Vidyadhara, Yaksha. Wait. That's way more than 8, right? Vibhuta means the really wise, the enlightened ones. That's basically when you say gods, you think of the Vibhutis. Then you have Pitri, the ancestrals. Then you have Asura, the demons. Then you have the enjoyers. The enjoyers, let's think maybe they're the fourth class, and they include the Gandharva and the Apsara. Gandharva, sometimes it's said that Gandharvas are male and Apsaras are female, and they're one species. Then the fifth type is masters, the masters of powers, and there's three subdivisions in there. The Siddhas, who are masters of technology, the Charnas, who are master of arts, and the Vidyadhars, who are masters of science. Then the sixth group of divinities is monsters. Monsters are superhuman. And so these monsters are two basic classes, Yaksha and Raksha. If I can remember the differences, the Yaksha are kind of like protectors. The Yakshas are kind of like protectors of the plants and trees and things. And the Raksha, I'm not sure what the Raksha are. Maybe they're just destructive monsters. No, they're not, because there's monsters are in a separate category from the eighth one. 8 types: wise, ancestrals, demons, enjoyers, masters, monsters, destructive spirits, and humanoids. So the monsters and the destructive spirits are slightly different. Destructive spirits have 3 subtypes: Bhuta, Preta, and Kshacha. Bhuta, basic English translation might be ghost. Preta is like a zombie. And Kshacha is an ogre. So obviously they're not actually ghosts and zombies. They're superhuman creatures. But their bodies are are ghosts and zombies. Preta means the dead. Kshacha. And then you got divine humanoids. The final class of, probably actually the first class which evolved. Probably because it's the simplest one, right? Are the humanoid divinities. Of course, they're all pretty much humanoid, right? But these are they're called humanoids because they're human hybrids. True. The Yaksha and Raksha, they're probably protecting nature. And then there's these other monsters that are destroying nature. And then there's humanoids, Kinnara, Kimpurusha, they're human-animal hybrids. Do the gods, Miss Vinay asks, do the gods live as long as Brahma? Or do they also go through the reincarnation cycle? Nobody lives as long as Brahma, only Brahma. Some people, of course, beings that exist outside the universe live without a time limit. But within a universe, within an external environment, Brahma is the longest enduring. The gods have other lifespans. Very long lifespans by human calculation. Some are living for 1 manvantara, which I think is some number of million of years. Some live for lesser periods, but none of them live 30 years. They all live for fantastic lifespans. Great. Any other questions? So you basically got an introduction to all the different kinds of life forms that there are also. And you just saw there's 6 stages of evolution where Brahma's not involved. It's just kind of happening automatically by things interacting with each other. It's mostly driven by time. Time's causing the avyakta, the unmanifest universe, to become vyakta, the manifest universe. Then the second phase, time causes the manifest seed, mahatattva, to become the sense of doership and will. Because the conscious beings that are in the external reality are going to use that willpower and ambition. And then time causes that will to interact with Rajas, Tamas, and Sattva to produce objects, tools to interact with objects, and power to use the tools. And then the 6th phase, those are the 3 phases. 1 and 2 1 develops the Mahatattva, 2 develops the Ahankara, 3, 4, 5 develop those 3 things, the objects, the tools, and the powers to use the tool. 6 develops ignorance or darkness, which envelops consciousness, which can envelop consciousness into a particular structure. Whoa, I have to go and not limit it. Okay, so I have to go. I have an appointment. I forgot about that. And then 7, 8, and 9 are the development that Brahma guides, which is the plants, the animals, the humans, and then the gods. Okay. The gods measure it differently. The gods measure it in celestial years, usually, or relative to their. Everybody measures time relative to their cycle, their basic day-night cycle. All right, guys, gotta go.